I would drive to Detroit sometimes, and the owner or the CEO was a great guy, like top-notch guy. But when I'd walk by his office, I'd get nervous. And there was no reason for that.
Yeah.
He had just bought my company. I should be a big shot. It's human nature.
Welcome to 5-Minute Founders, the show where we pick the brains of actual founders for the strategies, growth hacks, and stories of how they built their own companies. I'm your host, Matt LeBlanc, and today we are talking to the founder of Handwrytten, that is Handwrytten with a Y, David Wax. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure.
Of course. Let's jump right in. Why don't you explain to us what is your business and what pain point does it solve for?
Yeah, so my company is called Handwrytten, and Handwrytten, and we help companies create long-lasting, enduring relationships with their customers over handwritten notes. So we try to help our clients pivot from the digital back to the analog.
Yeah, and just to be a little bit more specific, I think that you've actually put like felt pens in the hands of, I think, something like 170 AI robots.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, very close. Yeah, 175. We use ballpoint pens typically.
Yeah.
Pilot G2 ballpoint pens. You can pick them up at like Office Max or something. We go through quite a few of those, and we write out the card. Well, we print the card. So if you want to design your own greeting card, we'll print that for you. And then we write out the card, and then we write out the envelope, stuff the right card in the right envelope, and stamp it and mail it on your behalf.
Right. And I think that sort of a big use case for this seems to be, customer outreach for a lot of brands. You can write notes, personalized notes at scale, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I feel in this day and age, people have really lost that tactile communication with clients. Everything's digital. So this helps bring back at least something that the customer or client can hold and feel in their hand and really hold on to. And we have a lot of case studies of clients sharing that their customers truly hold on to these for up to a year or more at a time. So that's really what we're about.
Yeah. And, I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but I did think it was really sort of fascinating the way that you guys were going about this. Not only are you actually using, pens in the hands of robots to make these, but you're actually doing certain things to kind of like create the imperfections of human handwriting, right? So the lines don't all start in the exact same place. Maybe the lines are closer together in some cases.
Yeah, we about a year and a half ago, we put out an email that said, announcing handwriting that's even worse than before. We're very proud of that because, as you said, we vary line spacing and then we vary kind of the left margin so it doesn't look like everything's on a hard edge. But then we started warping the text ever so slightly so that lines weren't, like rulers across the page. You could see the person trying to remain straight, but doing a fair to middling job. So yeah, we're always trying to ride that line, the uncanny valley, as it might be called, where you don't want it to be like overkill. You don't want things to jump down and jump up. You need everything to be so subtle that it kind of picks up the imperfections of a real person.
Absolutely. And you have a really sort of perfect background, I think, to be approaching something like this. So previously to starting the company Handwrytten, you founded a company called, I believe it was called Sell It.
Correct.
Which was, correct me, but I think in sort of the performance growth marketing space, I think you did a number of things there. But one of the things, maybe most notably, was built some real expertise in the SMS and MMS space. You were sending out, I think, like millions of messages on a daily basis.
I just want to clarify, it's not spam. Everybody opted in. I promise. We were very careful about that.
Yeah.
So when we started Sell It back in 2004, so I've been in messaging and kind of the broadest term for 20 years.
Wow.
But when we started in 2004, there was no Zillow. And so
Right.
when you wanted to go buy a house and get info on a house, there was an empty flyer box, and then maybe you could call a realtor and get info, but there was no other way to do it. So we allowed people to text in. They'd get back on their phone an MMS photo, couple photos of the house and, information on the house. And then the realtor would get the lead. And we quickly pivoted away from real estate to just general texting. So Abercrombie and Fitch, Toys R Us, Sam's Club, Office Max, Blue Man Group, Cirque du Soleil, like it kind of blew up.
Yeah.
And we powered all their text messaging engagement campaigns. Not really, spam. It was all people that wanted to receive alerts from these brands. So I spent from 2004 to 2012 with that company. Then I sold it and I worked for the new owners from 2012 to 2014. And then as soon as I was done with that, it's called an earn-out, the next day I started Handwrytten.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I really wanted to ask about this transition. I've heard that you say, actually, I think like your wife thought maybe that wasn't even the best idea. It seems like you had like a pretty generous like exit from Sell It, and then, to make the choice to go all in with your own funds on Handwrytten. What was that belief that you had in this? What was that passion, or what hole did you see in the market that made you go all in?
It wasn't my wife because I wasn't married at the time. That happened strangely very quickly thereafter, but that's a story for another day. I think ennui. I quickly get bored. What I should have done was packed up a bag and traveled the world, but for whatever reason, it was a cold, wintry, it was a February in Chicago. I thought, why not start this? And before you know it, it was a real business that I had to manage. So it just kind of happened. I should have really taken a break. It's been a good ride, and it's more and more fun every day now. So I'm happy I've gone down this path.
Yeah. So you make this transition. You're still in messages, very different kinds of messages, right? So what strategies and lessons, if any, did you take from your experience with Sell It, and how do they apply to the Handwrytten notes that you're sourcing now?
After I sold Sell It, I kind of worked for this company called ePrize. Now it's part of Merkle, which is a big marketing database company. But there, I spoke a lot about preference centers, and people want to receive emails, and they also want to receive texts, and you have to create a part on your website where people can opt in for either, and maybe opt in for certain texts and certain emails and that type of thing. And now I think it's important, to think about that even more broadly and say, you need to be able to communicate with customers on all fronts. So text, email, handwritten notes, phone calls, print pieces, push notifications, pretty much everything. So what I learned was, being where the customer's mind is,
Yeah.
So their mind they might not be an email, because especially now when you receive so many emails a day, It's impossible to stand out. So it's really just having that preference center and allowing people to opt in, opt out for different forms of communication.
Right. So then how do handwritten notes generate returns for brands?
Our number one use case, now we do have clients that do prospecting. Typically that's for high value things, whether it's a jewelry store opening a new location. We currently have a B2B company that's sending out cards, and you can scan a QR code and get a free bottle of a beautiful wine. So a lot of people are doing it. So there is that prospecting. But for the most part, because the costs involved, people really save us for engaging their existing customers, because
Right.
You spend all this money attracting customers, now you need to retain them. And it's often way cheaper and a better client experience to retain that customer than to churn them and start all over again. So we help customers, number one, with thank you notes more than anything. And then so people say, okay, what's the ROI of that thank you note? And it makes my stomach twist a little bit, because I think people shouldn't have an ROI for a thank you note. You should always say thank you. It's the right thing to do. But I think a better way to put it is, as Albert Einstein said, not everything that can be measured matters, and not everything that mattered can be measured. And I think handwritten notes are really part of that. Now, we do have clients that do measure it, but anytime I think and the best way to measure it is through an A/B test. Send some of your clients a handwritten note, don't send to others, and see the difference. Because anytime you try to measure it more than that, by whether it's including a QR code or providing an offer code or whatever it is, you're diluting the true nature of that thank you. Now it's not a thank you, now it's an advertisement. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but there's no one answer for everybody. That said, we have a piano tuner based in Pennsylvania. Every time they tune your piano, they send you a handwritten note. They only need to be in your house once a year, so that you only get one handwritten note a year. A year later, when that piano tuner gets to your house, that handwritten note is often standing up on the piano. Wow. So not only was it open, not only was it read, it's put on display on the most expensive item in their house, in the fanciest room of their house, and it's looked at every time they play the piano. So, that's a type of advertising that's very, very hard to come by.
Yeah.
It puts you in a completely different category than any other marketing that you can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. It seems almost kind of serendipity kind of going through that type of marketing, because even a piano tuner just seems like sort of like an out of the box or creative kind of use case for what you're doing. I was curious, do you have a handle on like who are your most popular customers? What types of business are they?
Yeah, I mean, we have everything. It's really anybody that's looking to stand out in this sea of electronic communication, but we do very well with high-touch events such as end-of-life care for pets or people. We do well with automotive dealerships, nonprofits. Nonprofits, the number one issue with a nonprofit is redonation rate. So they spend all this time acquiring you, Matt, to donate, and then your redonation rate is typically in the 42 to 48% rate. So they lose over half of their donors every year, and they churn. And the number one reason of the churn is because donors don't feel thanked. And I think feeling thanked and being thanked are very different things. So if I go on, to some donors, nonprofit's website, and I donate online, and then I immediately get back an email from Blackbaud or whoever their donor management platform is saying thank you, is that a thank you? Not to me, it's not. Being thanked and feeling thanked are very, very different. We help people feel thanked at scale. So it works very well for nonprofits, but really, any high ticket item, a lot of realtors use us, that type of thing too.
Yeah, as you're talking, it really makes a lot of sense that those high ticket items and maybe companies that have sort of like intimate pain point with a customer really makes sense to get a kind of note. And I think that you referenced sort of end of life. In the area of pets, I read a story from you that said, was talking, I think it was about like a dog food or like pet food company. And they were keeping track of when the pet would pass, and then they would send a condolences note and sort of retain that customer for the next pet, which is, I mean, it's really pretty brilliant.
Yeah. And then we have another one, or maybe it's the same one, that sends out birthday hats every year for your, with the handwritten card, and you're supposed to put it on the pad and take a photo and post it to Instagram, which is a lot of fun, and it's great for them to have that viral aspect as well. So people can get very creative about it, but I think the best use case is just automating thank you notes. If you sit here and try to pontificate and find the best campaign ever, which is always good to do, you're going to miss out on the huge and easy automation opportunity of just automating thank you notes, automating birthday cards, that type of thing. So,
right. So when you say automating, are the companies providing the messages, like the actual text that they want to go on the card? They are.
Yeah, typically, but then we trigger it, from their CRM platform. So with birthday and anniversary, we have a whole system for that. So they just upload their lists and off they go at the appropriate time. For all other messaging, they typically do provide it. We do offer a ChatGPT interface on our website, but we don't make that available via the API, because to be a fully hands-off and not read what ChatGPT is about to send out in your handwriting, I don't think is a good idea. Now, we do have people do that with us. They use, they'll use Make or Zapier or something and connect it all up and think they're very clever, and they are very clever, and if it works, great. But there could be the use case, or there could be the case here and then when ChatGPT sends something completely off the wall. So I personally don't recommend it, but that can be done too. Typically, the client has a templated note with a bunch of merge fields in it. So, and if you put enough merge fields in something, it's going to sound personal. You know,
Right.
Dear Matt, so glad you stopped at our store and bought that teal shirt. So you don't say teal, cotton, medium, men's, you know, whatever the SKU
Sure.
is. You roll it up to the top level category of shirt. And that's the right level of personalization. So we work with clients on that type of stuff too.
Within these messages, do you see any trends in the types of messages that are really cutting through the noise? The content, I guess I'm talking about?
What really cuts through the noise, honestly, is the handwritten envelope, because envelopes have a 3 times greater open rate than printed.
I bet.
Yeah. So that is the key. And then once you got them opened, keep it short. We have clients that want to send, 1,000 characters or 2,000 characters. Nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to believe it. But if you keep it to 500 characters or less, it's more digestible. It's not a homework assignment for the recipients. I would say the big things are keep it short. For thank you notes, keep it as what I call a full stop thank you. Don't include calls to action. If you do want to include a call to action on that, I'd put that call to action printed on the card so it looks like you grabbed some card that already had that and then you write a personal note on it. So like on the back of the card, maybe include a QR code or something, but don't print it on the writing area or don't write it in the writing area. You want it to seem very unique or very personal. So those are kind of the big ones. And then being consistent, sending up to 4 handwritten cards a year. I would say 1 to 2 is really just fine. And certainly no more than 4,
Sure.
Everybody's going to know you have better things to do than sitting around and sending handwritten notes all day.
We got our 12th note from the
Yeah.
pet food company. It's getting a little creepy.
Yeah, it's a little creepy.
Yeah. David, I heard that you once had the opportunity to have dinner with Conan O'Brien. He gave you this advice, get in over your head.
100%.
I wonder, in the time since that dinner, how or when have you ever taken that advice and how did you grow from that experience?
First of all, I'm impressed how much research you've done for this 5-minute thing. So that was in college. I used to be on the committee that would bring speakers to campus. And back then, I mean, we're talking late 90s. He was still kind of just starting out in his career. And he said he didn't have much advice for us, but that was the advice he had. Always get in over your head. And smash cut to 2003. I moved to San Diego to work for a venture capital firm, and I was promptly, and that was in October. By January, I was fired. I didn't know what to do, and I was broke, and I was also evicted at the same time. It was quite a San Diego experience. You can probably find it on some podcast or something. But I was broke, evicted, and jobless, and I actually moved back to Arizona. And I started started Sell It rather, thinking now's the time to get in over your head because I wasn't ready to start a company. I didn't have the funds. I felt kind of dismayed by being fired and all the rest. So I think it's just really, and then with Handwrytten, we were using these off-the-shelf handwriting machines, auto pen machines, and the quality was just terrible. And the company was hard to work with. And I thought, we're going to have to build our own handwriting robot. I'm a software guy. I don't know the first thing about building a robot, but I figured, we'll get in over our head, we'll figure it out. And now we're on Rev 4, Rev 5 of these robots, and we have 175 and then, another 30 out in the field or something. So, it's just learning to try to expand what you think you can do. And you're never going to grow if you're in your comfy spot. You have to stretch and do new things. It's no different than running a race. If you run at your normal speed, I mean, I guess if you're Usain Bolt or something, you could do it, but you always have to push and always try to go faster and faster. And it's important in business as well.
I think you've actually described it as the figure it out gene.
Yeah, so that's an important thing my team has to have is now we call it be the change you seek, not effing figure it out. But yeah, it's the figure it out gene. We try to make sure that they at least try to come up with the right solution and be that change and really try to figure out a way to make things happen. Because nowadays, especially, like most anything else can just be Googled or ChatGPT'd or something. But to come up with something new, you got to figure it out.
David, how do you vet this quality in team members. Have you come across any tells that people have when they're interviewing where you can see, ooh, this person has that figure it out gene that I want?
Yeah, early on in Handwrytten, I had a woman named Charity come in for an interview, and I needed her to kind of work the robots at the time. And I said, well, are you familiar with Microsoft Excel? And she said, not really, no. And so I sat down for 3 minutes and I gave her some simple formulas and said, this is how you do addition, this is how you do whatever. And I said, now do this, now have it do this. And she took 2 minutes, but she figured it out, So there's some pretty easy tests you can do with people to see. A lot of people are like a deer in headlights, and they just won't, especially nowadays. I think people expect everything to be spoon-fed to them. I had one SDR that came in, we gave him very little guidance, and next thing you know, he's got meetings with major companies on the books. Another one, we gave more guidance, and then he got nothing. And then when we had to let him go, he said, well, it's because I didn't have anybody telling me what to do. So there's just, like anything else, it's a personality trait, and you just try to really look for that.
And actually, just through you sort of explaining that, I always think that, any founder sort of emulates themselves in a lot of ways in the people that they hire. And it sounds like you have that gene. And so maybe there's a little intuition there too that sort of helps you sniff it out.
Yeah, I just, I don't know. It's just fun. It's fun to cultivate that from employees. And it's also fun to turn employees into things they never thought they would be, whether that's turning a yoga instructor into a world-class account manager, or turning somebody that used to work at Quick Trip, which is like a Circle K, into the head of operations. It's just fun to watch these people grow and find themselves in their work.
Yeah. David, what constitutes a successful founder, in your opinion?
I would say impacting people's lives. And, even if the venture fails, if you fail gracefully and treat the people that were along for the ride with you respectfully, I think that's a big thing. I think also having the tenacity and the grit to stick with it beyond what is humanly possible. It typically takes 2 to 3 years to really get something off the ground. And a lot of that 2 to 3 years, it's like somebody bashing you in the face with a baseball bat every day. So being able to stick with that for 2 to 3 years until something changes, I think is really key. Entrepreneurship, unlike playing a baseball game, or I guess a basketball game is a better analogy, there's no time limit. The game ends when you give up, and you can change the rules in the middle of the game, which is a beautiful thing. So, just being able to stick with it long enough and figure out how to change the rules so you can win at it. That's kind of the key, is sticking it, keeping at it for two plus years.
I heard you give this talk. I thought it was really insightful, talking about the energy of a CEO and how a CEO almost needs to sort of protect their team from their energy sometimes. I think that you explained, you could walk into a building and you walk into your building, and if you have the wrong face on, you're going to change the energy of that whole building. Maybe that's the same reason that it's valuable for you to have a private office, or, you're sort of, you're protecting the environment that you're in. Yeah.
Good gravy. How much research did you do? Yeah. So, it's interesting. So I've really tried to temper who I am, especially in the last couple of years, because people do react to it. When I sold the last company, I did do financially pretty well. And my company was in Chicago, and the owner, the new CEO of the parent company, was in Detroit. And, I would drive to Detroit sometimes, and the owner or the CEO was a great guy, like top-notch guy. But when I'd walk by his office, I'd get nervous. And there was no reason for that. He had just bought my company. I should be a big shot. It's human nature, and that energy, people, they respect you, which is a good thing. Hopefully people respect you. You have to be aware of that, I would say. You have to be aware of the energy you create, and that your face is public property, so treat it that way. Try to come in with a smile on your face. Try to be consistent. People don't like inconsistency, if you're constantly, what's David's mood today? Is he crazy or normal? And then the other thing I've tried to learn in my ripe old age is I try to meditate a little bit. I've also undergone hypnosis to help me because I can, all these things to try to create an environment where people know that you're a professional.
Yeah.
And when they come by your desk, they expect a certain thing.
Well, it's interesting because you're sort of you're grappling with all of this also in a time when it's so popular for a CEO such as yourself to be really in the public eye. We're on a public podcast right now. I know you write a column, I think, for Inc. magazine, and do different sort of media talks and that kind of thing. I wondered how your philosophy on that CEO's energy sort of carries over to being someone who's kind of in the public eye. Are you ever doing something in media and sort of toe the line of being too transparent, or how is what I'm sharing here going to affect my company?
Honestly, maybe it's paranoia. So I do get concerned about our competitors listening and oh, they're going after this market, maybe we should too. So, and that it has happened. I've had competitors, I've gone on the phone with them to talk about potentially acquiring or whatever, and then they, recount a bunch of podcasts I was on. I was like, how much time do you have on your hands to sit here and listen to your competition on podcasts? But I think you do have to be careful. I'm fortunate that we're not a public company, so I don't have to worry about investor relations. I mean, I think that changes everything. Also, because I am the founder, I think it gives me a little bit more leeway to be a little bit more who I am. I'm not like some professional manager that comes in. I mean, I think a lot of the times once the founder's replaced by somebody else and that other person could be perfectly fine, some of the energy's pulled out of the room. I felt that in my last company when they replaced me with another manager. I felt like we lost a lot of energy, positivity. So
yeah, David, I've spoken to a good handful of founders who are sort of approaching the exit to their company, and they're sort of anticipating what qualities they're going to be looking for in the person that acquires their baby.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe you could shed some light on that area as somebody who's gone through it. Maybe what qualities did you look for in the company that was acquiring Sell It? And I don't know, is there anything you can kind of tell us to sort of navigate that situation?
Well, I would say plan for the worst. I think it's a very emotional time, and make the earnout as short as possible. So I had a 2-year earnout where I had to stay there for 2 years, if possible, limited to 1 year, because your business should be in, and you need to communicate that your business is a product and it's ready to go. You don't need me there. I'm not adding much to this product. So there's that benefit too. In fact, it could make your business more valuable if the risk of you is out the window. But from a personal perspective, having to sit in an office and watch them dismantle what you spent 8 or 10 years building is very painful. I would say look at how the business fits in to the other products and services of the organization, and make sure it's not a competitive nature. So, if you go into an organization with a large sales team and they're selling another product, maybe they have their own robotic handwriting service, and then they bring in your product and you're competing with that, which one are they going to sell? Are you going to be the not invented here? Are they going to suffer from not invented here syndrome?
Right.
And they're just not going to push your product? Are the incentives aligned to push your product? Maybe you're a low margin, i.e. low commission offering versus what they typically sell, high margin, high commission. Are you going to get any of their airtime? So, trying to think through how your product is going to fit into the other products of that sales channel, I think is very, very important. Yeah, that's really it. And then obviously upper management, how they're going to treat you. I was treated very well by the company that acquired us, but it was more on the lower end how the team members treated my team members was where there was an issue.
Interesting. Also, it sounds like you walked away with a really valuable lesson in leading your own team. You know, the way that you felt yourself sort of maybe shuffling past your new boss's door and feeling intimidated made you look at yourself a little bit differently as a leader. Yeah. David, I really appreciate all of the stories and the insight today. Is there anywhere that people can follow you?
You know, you're more than welcome to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm the only David W from Handwritten on LinkedIn, but I don't pontificate on X or anything like that, so don't expect anything from me there. LinkedIn is good, or feel free to reach out via email, david@handwritten.com. I would also say, if anybody's curious about this, visit our website, click business at the top, and request free samples so you can see for yourself if they do the trick.
Thank you so much, David. And if you are interested in hearing more about Handwrytten and how they can help you with your business, you can reach out at www.handwrytten.com, and that is handwritten with a Y. Also, if you are listening and you are interested in exploding your own digital growth, you can get in touch with Jump 450 in the link below in the description. That is www.jump450.com. And do not forget to subscribe for more weekly episodes. We'll see you next time.